Hectares of mostly unexplored mountain country south of Brisbane. The Aborigines were so afraid of this place they refused to walk into it. Right now it's celebrating its 75th anniversary as a protected area. Anywhere else there'd be an indifferent response, but this is not your average national park. This is about as close as you'll get to untouched rainforest, but it's a treacherous place, and in its 75-year history, it's claimed a long list of victims. Add to that the stories about giant ape men, Yowies, and you start to wonder whether this place should be called the Lamington Triangle.
Yeah.
Here we go. Some O'Reilly's Lamingtons, fresh baked.
Oh, Lamington's just my favourite.
This must be about the only place in the world you can have your Lamington and eat it too. And they were both named in honour of the same bloke, Lord Lamington, a former Queensland governor. Here at O'Reilly's guest house on the western fringe of the park is where the Lamington legend first began to take shape. And not far from here, the Triangle took its first victims. February 1937, and the entire nation was focused on the missing Stinson airliner, which had vanished between Brisbane and Sydney. While searchers were combing the coastline, a young bushman called Bernard O'Reilly was acting on a hunch. He set off into the national park and came back a hero. He had found the wreck and 2 survivors. The disaster had taken 11 lives. 40 years later, and just 1 week before he died, he talked about the moment he found the plane.
I was only 15 yards away when I saw them. Like gas in the trees, and the wind.
But while Bernard was gracing the front pages, this lady was out looking for adventure on the other side of the park. Marjorie Groom lives at Binnaburra, and at 78 she still likes to get out and explore. It's given her the chance to see some unusual and beautiful sights. But she's found this park has a dark side as well.
One man came up from Brisbane one Sunday afternoon and wanted to climb Ballandooey Falls, and it was light rain. And Arthur said, no, don't do it. But he, unfortunately, did. And of course he came to grief. He couldn't get very far up. And a policeman told my youngest son, years later, that he was clutching a clump of grass in his hand. He had tried to support himself by that only. And with all this moisture around grass, it's not the best thing to hang on to.
There are some magnificent spots in this park, but so many people have paid the ultimate price in getting to see them. Others have simply disappeared. For every crag, cave and waterfall in Lamington, there's a story of violent death. Doing a spot of sightseeing in this place can take on a whole new meaning.
If you look, this is Moorings Creek down below us here, and just to the right-hand side of Moorings Falls is where the old, their first old O'Reilly hut was.
They reckon if you're ever lost in the Lamington, Peter O'Reilly will always find you. He's one of those rare breed of bushmen. Somehow he's on the same wavelength as the park, but he's also mindful of its dangers.
The rock you see there is generally basalt, which is pretty rotten stuff, so it's not good for climbing. And really, most of the crags around here have claimed a life or two over the years. You know, the Lost World, which is the big mountain over there, there'd be a couple of deaths there. It is a worrying sort of a thing.
Death in the Lamington is no recent phenomenon. During World War II, this place was used as a training ground for Australian and American soldiers, and not all of them came back.
After the war, there was a grazier in the valley here under Pat's Bluff who found a couple of bodies that had been there for quite a long while, and they think they were killed by a rolling rock, actually, that came down the mountain.
But long before the park was ever used for combat training, this bloke was wandering around the forest with a machete. Reg Cullen walked up to 30 kilometres a day through this jungle, building walking tracks. The work was wet and dirty.
it'd be impossible for people to live like it today, but we didn't know any difference. You know, you had to wear your clothes all the week, just and your blankets and everything. Blankets be all fly blown. Well, they could fly along and just lay live maggots. You know, you'd be eating your meal and blowfly would fly over and it'd be fly blown. You know, they were live, they just laid them live.
But Reg isn't the sort of bloke to complain about such things. Anyway, out here, maggots are the least of your worries.
You got all sorts of vines, ticks, leeches, fire vine, everything, and also yowies.
Yowies? You're pulling my leg, aren't you, Reg?
No.
Well, where are they?
Oh, they're round. They don't want you to see them.
I think we better keep going then, Reg, eh?
You reckon?
Yeah. Every forest has its creatures of the night, but very few play host to the yowie. There's been stories about yowies in this place for as long as anyone can remember. They make up the unknown element. According to the Aborigines, this was real yowie country. Believe it or not, but in a century and a half of white settlement here, there's been over 200 reported sightings. But clearly not everyone's worried.
I haven't even heard one, but people talk about them, but I've only just laughed at it.
We'll probably never get to the bottom of the Lamington mystery. After all, it's been here for thousands of years. Its relatively short official history records a plethora of death and mystery. But it's also brought joy to so many people. The answer probably lies with the yowies. They represent what we fear and what we don't know.
Tonight